Okay, there we go. Okay, so it's being recorded now. Thank you, Gary. And anyway, my name is Ginger Elliott-Teague. If I haven't met you before, I'm the Director of Data Analysis for the Department of Ed and Special Education. And my team and I manage all state and federal data reporting for Oklahoma. So it's a lot of fun. And we hope to give you some information that will help you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Just a quick note, I am at home and there are people doing some construction work at my neighbor's house, yay. And there, of course, is family noise in the background. So forgive me if you hear a lot of background noise. Hopefully it won't be too loud and distracting. Okay, so to get started, it's special circumstances. Unless you hear otherwise, all data collections and submissions are on the original schedule. Okay, we have to submit federal files timely in November. So we must collect district data on a timely manner. So we don't have any delays in that. We do have a few changes though, specifically for indicators 7, 11, 12, and 13. I will talk about those specifically when we get to them in the next section. So just hold off on those details. You will be reporting through the end of the year with what I'm calling temporary precautions, okay? Specifically, we are waiting for notification from OSEP at the federal office about whether they will permit any flexibility in the evaluation timeline compliance for initial consents and for 3-year-olds transitioning from Part C. So if your district has no delayed evaluations or Part C referrals that were due after March 13th, just submit your data as usual, as we're going to talk about for the end of year data collection. You don't have to do anything different or special. But if your district has any delayed evaluations or transitions due after March 13th, but you are unable to complete, you need to begin your end of year data reports for indicators 11 and 12 only by dividing your data into 2 parts. And we will talk about that in a little bit. But just know that OSEP, we're waiting on some information from them about flexibility and compliance timelines. And until we hear from them, it could change how we report the data. It may be that we report this school year. It may be that we report next school year. So we don't want to have you all submit everything and then have to change it all. So just hold off on that. We should know by June what they're going to say. And if they don't tell us by then we'll just go ahead with what we had planned previously. So we'll talk about how to track that and how to compile that information when we get to indicators 11 and 12 in a little bit, okay? Let's see. Okay, a couple other notices about data collections. Post-secondary outcomes. We collect that through an annual survey. It's done 1 year after students leave high school. And we are looking for districts interested in surveying your own students who exited the previous year. Okay, so we contract with an organization out of Utah, and they make phone calls, they send emails, they send mail surveys to your students who exited the last school year. But a lot of states have a lot of success working with districts to collect that information. So if you are interested in doing that, please give me a call, give Lori Chesnut a call. Well, no calls, emails. And we will talk to you about how to do that, what it might look like. It will enhance your own data collection about post-secondary outcomes, and especially if you have programs to support transition and to support post-secondary outcomes, having that data could be really useful for you to know if those are working, okay? Related to that, if you, for all of your upcoming graduates, you need to have them update their contact information in the student information system, including their personal emails, so that we have that information for next summer. We have a lot of contact information that's out of date every year, and the most up-to-date information that we can get is always useful. Okay. Next, child count and settings. So this will affect you somewhat. Okay, OSEP changed how 5-year-olds are counted. Now they are either counted in the 3 to 5-year-old group or the 6 to 21-year-old group, depending on which grade they are in. This will affect indicators 5, 6, and 7 and personnel. Okay, so we want to make sure that you know that and understand what you'll be seeing in your reports. It will also change what you have to report for ECO ratings and reported with the early childhood group, the 3 to 5-year-olds. To 21, and that requires an let's see. Looks like there was a problem with the internet. Can you guys hear me now? Can you all hear me now? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. Don't know what happened. Probably my home internet. So with the 3 to 5-year-olds, from our perspective, 5-year-olds are split into 2 data sets that we submit to OSEP now. From your perspective, all you will see is on your child count report this fall, 5-year-olds in kindergarten will have an LRE instead of an ECE, so you'll have to review that. But we will update that report at that time. So that's really the main effect for you guys. From our perspective, it changes the reports that we submit federally, but you don't see those, okay? Next, notice significant disproportionality. We are changing the thresholds in the process. The threshold for designation of significant, meaning requiring set aside, is now 3.0 for all categories. And we are creating an at-risk designation. So if a district is 2 years in a row at or above those intermediate thresholds that we've used in the past, you will be designated at risk, and there will be some improvement activities to prevent you from becoming significant and having to set aside. The idea behind this change is that as we've been working with districts that have been significantly disproportionate, we have found that a lot of changes can be made without major funding requirements. So changes to policies, changes to some procedures, and that doesn't require much cost to do that. So the set aside can be onerous for some districts. But so by setting the threshold a little bit higher, we are hoping that fewer districts will be designated significant and have to set aside funding. But you will, for those that still have quite high risk ratios above 2.5, 2.5, or 2.6, you will be required to do additional work, okay? Because we believe that those are still untenable and problematic thresholds, okay? But we're going to be providing that guidance in a little bit as we go forward. It looks like about 14 districts, however, have surpassed 3.0 for identification this year. So there will be some districts having that problem also. Okay. Final notice before we get into the actual data is SSIP. Our previous SSIP has ended, our State Systemic Improvement Plan. We are working on a new one. We held stakeholder meetings in January and February to determine a new state identified measurable results. We're hoping to look at the rates of disciplinary removals across the state. But we have to get that approved by OSEP, and we won't know that until the summer. So it's going to be mid to late summer before we can hold additional stakeholder meetings to determine those improvement activities in infrastructure, evidence-based practices, which partners we will work with, and so forth. So Just keep that in mind. If you hear about that, we would love your participation and your input into what kinds of strategies we should implement to improve and reduce discipline across Oklahoma. So if you have ideas, just let us know and we hope you'll participate. Okay, so moving on to the overview of the end of year data collection. Why do we collect end of year data? Some states collect data in multiple data collections throughout the year. Here in Oklahoma, we have two. We have child counted settings, and then we have end of year. There are two outside of our control. There's graduation and assessment that also occur. But for special education data, we just have two, to make it easier for you guys and for us to just submit as much as possible at one time. So federal reporting requirements dictate what we have to collect and when, which fiscal years, which school years, so forth, and it partly depends on when we have to submit that annually. We are judged, all states are judged and scored for compliance with data submissions. Is it timely, accurate, and complete? They review all of that annually, and this year we had 92% out of 100%. So as a state, we are not perfect with our compliance submissions, partly because of other offices, but some things outside of our control also. And with that in mind, we have to hold districts accountable to that compliance also, and timely, accurate, and complete data. So if the districts don't have timely, complete, and accurate data, then the state won't either, and that affects all of us. So the reason we focus so much on this and want to make sure that you all submit very high quality data is it helps us as a state with the federal reporting and with federal oversight. So the less federal oversight, the better, okay? And that's good for all of us. So today we're going to be talking through several data reporting topics. We're going to talk through those data elements we collect through the district summary data page, which includes the 45-day timeline compliance, early childhood transition compliance, CEIS participation and personnel. Then we'll talk through some student level data we collect through EdPlan, exiting, secondary transition, EC outcomes, and discipline. We'll talk through certification. And in this presentation, we will not have time to go over the AR reports. That was done in the previous one that was much longer. Okay, that takes a good half hour by itself. Today, we are limited to just going through the data, but we do have an AR advanced reporting reports manual on our website that you can look at and use. Okay, so a few notes about data quality. Please, please, please update your contact information in the grants management system in the LEA agreement. We use that email address, we use that name as the primary contact for special education annually. And if it's not up to date, then you will not get critical information, you will not get emails, you won't get notifications, you won't get the district data profiles, and you won't get your determinations. Okay, because that is the official email that we use. So make sure that it is correct in the LEA agreement. In the past, most districts are doing better at this, but in the past, that contact information has been years old because no one has ever looked at it. So please make sure you talk to whoever works in your grants management system and make sure that the special education contact information is up to date. Also, in EdPlan, update your site codes, or at least check them. So if you've had sites change this past year, or you are going to be adding sites over the summer, or disbanding sites, or changing sites, or anything like that, please use, go in and update the site codes to the official site code used by the Department of Ed. Okay, it's very important that you do that. We have in the past had to remove students from child count because the site codes are not correct and we have no way of knowing what the correct site code should be. It's critically important that you have the correct site codes in EdPlan. Okay, we cannot submit a child federally or to state aid if they have the incorrect site code. So check that, please. Activate and review your Sooner Start referral records. It's especially important right now because those could be, you could be held liable for delays if you're not looking at those. Okay, so make sure you go in and look at those always, always. And then exit reasons. So if you have students who have exited during the year, and on the exiting report, they are missing an exit reason, you need to go into that student's record and update the exit reason. If you try to update it and it won't let you, feel free to email us. We can help you with that. It has to do with the student history. And some of the events are conflicting and the system doesn't know what's correct. So we have to update, make some changes to that student history page in order for it to read the exit reason. So just email us if you have one of those questions. Okay, a few critical deadlines this year. We are going to pull data from EdPlan on July 1, that's Wednesday. You have your cleanup window is between now and July 1, okay, until about 9 a.m. on July 1. Make sure that you clean up your data now. You look at your reports, you check to make sure that all of your student data is correct. After July 1, it's a lot harder for us to make changes to that data set because we have to pull data on July 1 in order to get the school year data. So please clean up now. That will help make sure that your data is timely, accurate, and complete, and it will help all of us submit great data. Superintendents can certify between July 2nd and July 15th in single sign-on, and we will go through in a little while how they can do that if you haven't done that in the past. So just hold on and we will talk about that. Shala had a question, how do I know if we had changes to our site codes? If you added sites or disbanded sites, that's the, if a site changed like from kindergarten to include pre-K, your site code may have changed, so make sure you check that. You can compare site codes on the State Department of Ed website to those in EdPlan. You can look at what we publish publicly and look at that list of site codes for your district and compare those to what you have in EdPlan. That's probably the easiest way to double check everything. And that is just on the State Department of Ed website. Okay, a few resources for you. I'm putting this up front instead of at the end because all of you like to know where you can find this. This is the link where everything is. We have lots of guidance and templates on our website. We have the end of year data collection manual. It's from last year, but it's still mostly up to date. We have discipline walkthrough, decision tree for principals and others who need to enter discipline for students into EdPlan and the student information system. We have information on EC environments and outcomes, and then the advanced reporting system reports manual. We also have several templates that you can use for end of year data reporting. We have a non-compliance template, and that has provides you a template to share with us the lists of students whose evaluations or transitions were delayed, and that is required information. If you had any delays that were not family reasons, you have to provide those lists to us, and we will bug you about them if you don't, so just know that. We have discipline uploads, files that you can use to upload your discipline. So if, especially larger districts with a lot of disciplinary events, it's much easier to use the spreadsheet and upload that automatically, and that's on our website. And then we have an FTE calculator for personnel, and that's mostly helpful for larger districts too. If you have a lot of folks and trying to calculate and add up all of those FTEs can be troublesome, so we have that on there also. Okay, and if you have questions about any of those documents, you are welcome to email us and ask us questions. Okay, district summary data. So we'll move on to the district summary data page. This is administrator access only in EdPlan. So if you are not administrator level in EdPlan, then you need to talk to whoever is and either get access or work with them to fill out this page. And you access it through the green menu bar in your district main menu page. When you click on that, you just click on district summary data and it will open up a new interface where you can save your information. The page can be saved and updated multiple times. So if you want to enter some information now and then wait a month and enter more information, as long as you save it, all of that information will be saved. We will pull it on July 1. Download it on that date, and at that time, if you make any changes to it after that, you will be considered untimely. So if it is not complete, and we have districts that have this issue every year, if that page is not complete, you will be flagged as timely and non-compliant on your district determination. So it's critically important that you get that completed. And empty boxes will count as incomplete. We have to have zeros in there. When we look at that page, we do not know if you have reviewed it and entered all of your information. If there are empty boxes, we have to assume that it is incomplete. So please, please, if you have empty boxes, just put a 0 in there, and then we'll know that you've seen it, and then we'll be able to say, yes, this district is timely and compliant, which is what we want to do. We don't want any non-compliant districts. We want to make sure that you guys get your data in on time and get credit for that. So please review that. Okay, so on that page, we collect several pieces of information, the first of which is indicator 11, which is our 45-day timeline, sometimes called the child fine timeline. And the federal purpose for this is to report a count of delays and the reasons for delay in completing initial evaluations once parental consent is given. Again, initial evaluations, reevaluations do not need to be reported. Okay? The feds want to know, and we want to know, why delays occurred, if delays occurred, okay? And there are two broad categories of delay. We have family reasons, which are generally excused, and then other reasons which are not. So, changes for this year. Prepare your report with initial evaluations that were due by March 13th, okay? Using the district summary data table as a template. If you had none delayed, if you had none that were due after March 13th, okay, you can report all of your data now on the district summary data table and you don't need to wait. So if you don't have anything delayed due to COVID-19, due to the school closures, then go ahead and enter your data and there won't be any issues, okay? If you do have some delayed evaluations that are due after March 13th and that you have not been able to complete, track those separately. Track all of those evaluations, track their current status. Again, we are waiting for OSEP notice of compliance flexibility. And depending on that guidance, again, we will either report those delayed evaluations this year, or they may not report until next year. There's a chance that all districts and all states will receive an extension of days in the fall. We don't know that yet. We won't know probably for about a month what they're going to do with that, okay? So for now, keep track of all of that information on all of your delayed evaluations, monitor them, mark their current status, and by start of June, we will notify you on what to report and how, okay? But again, if you don't have any of those delayed due to that, then you don't need to, then you can go ahead and report your data as normal. So Marcy asks, does that include meetings we are having now since testing was completed and we can hold meetings? You can go ahead and report those. So unless they were delayed. So if the eligibility determination was delayed, then I would hold off on reporting those, just track those, track the number of days delayed, track the reason for delay, all of that kind of thing, okay? Okay, so this is what that table looks like. In this section on the district summary data page, essentially we're answering the question, why was the evaluation delayed, okay? So the first box is this total referrals, and it says referrals, but it means initial consent. Yes, does that include those that aren't late yet, but will be by the time school starts in the fall? Yes, that includes those. Great question. For evaluations, so that first box up there, where the arrow is now, that's a summary box, and that will add up everything that you enter in the boxes below. So that's a great check. Just make sure that number matches what it should be when you complete this table. Okay, the next line asks you to enter the number of evaluations that were completed within 45 days, 45 school days. Okay, so those are your timely evaluations. The next set, number 2, asks you to complete more detailed information for evaluations that were not completed timely. So if they were not completed within 45 school days, you need to offer a reason for delay. Reasons A and B: child changed districts prior to eligibility determination and parent failed or refused to produce the child. Mark those. Okay, if either of those occurred, those are considered family reasons. Okay, just enter the number that occurred. You do not need to report those students to us if an evaluation was delayed for one of those two reasons. Okay. A special note on reason A: a child changed districts prior to eligibility determination. If you were the district that received or collected the initial consent to the evaluation, you will report that student. Okay. Let's say, a student is in one district and they move to another. Before you can complete the evaluation, report that child here. If you are the receiving district and a student comes into your district prior to the evaluation occurring, the previous district got the initial consent, you will not be reporting that student. That student only needs to be reported by the sending district, not the receiving district. Okay. So Marcy asks, how do we calculate days late? If we don't know exact date, we will be able to evaluate and eventually have meetings. You just keep track of it. And once it can be held, then you can report the number of days. Line C here, parent refusal to sign consent for evaluation. Ignore that. That should be 0 always. We're trying to get that removed from the page, but it's taking some time to make that change. Okay, just ignore that. If parent refuses to sign consent, then the timeline hasn't started, so we just ignore that one. The last box, line D, all other late evaluations. This is anything that is late, any evaluation that is late that is not due to A or B. And this does not, A and B do not include late evaluations because the parent delayed a meeting. You can hold an evaluation, you can conduct an evaluation, you can hold an eligibility determination without the parents present, okay? You can do all of that. You can complete the MIGs without the parent present. So if the parents delay the meeting and keep delaying that meeting, you can make that determination on time and then hold the meeting to develop the IEP or to finalize non-eligibility and provide them that information. That can happen later, okay? So if an evaluation and eligibility determination are delayed for any other reason other than A or B, you need to report it down below. And so when let's say you have 2 late evaluations, in those boxes down below, that 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, over on the right, you will check one of those boxes or more than one of those boxes as to the reason why the evaluations were not completed timely, okay? And then you will have to upload the Excel document of all students who fall into that category. We need their name, STN, date of birth, reason for delay, and so forth. We have the template, non-compliance template that you will fill out. We have to have those names in order to do monitoring, okay? It's federally required that we make findings on those and that we track whether those were completed on time. So we have to have that information. And then finally, this last box here, for all evaluations not completed within 45 days, indicate the maximum number of days beyond the 45th day. So if it took 1 day more, let's say you completed it on the 46th day, you would enter 1 in this box. Let's say it took 2 months to complete it, you would enter that number here, okay? We do not use this data internally. This is a federal requirement, and we only report the maximum days for the entire state. So we just need this information from you. We don't use it for anything other than federal reporting. But it is mandated that we report that, so please provide us that information. Okay, will you be able to pull the slides back up after this meeting? Yes, the slides will be on, an early draft of the slides are already on our website. We did make some changes with changes to the OSEP guidance, okay? Yes, there's a report on EdPlan for all initial consents. It's in advanced reporting. Okay, so notes on the 45-day timeline. Only count initial consents and evaluations. Okay. Include your Sooner Start referrals in those counts if you received consent for additional evaluations. Okay. Include those Sooner Start referrals if consent is given for additional evaluations. If you're just using the Sooner Start data and you're doing a red and you're determining eligibility that way without additional evaluations, you don't need to report them for the 45-day timeline, just for indicator 12. Jessica asks, on the days that are over the original 45, just count school days? Yes. And another reminder, if you all can, when you type your chat notes, please make sure the to box says all panelists and attendees. That way everyone can see the questions, if you can please do that. It defaults to all panelists, so you'll need to go into that little drop down and check all panelists and attendees. Make sure you include all disabilities. Your speech evaluations count for 45-day timeline. They are special education students. They are receiving special education services, so you have to report them as initial consents and evaluations for your, if you're just evaluating for speech, okay? And again, for that, all other late evaluations, you have to create a separate Excel file that lists the names and STNs of those students. Now, at this time, again, if you have any delay due to COVID-19 and school closures, wait to enter those on the spreadsheet. We don't know yet if we will report them this year or next year. If they are reported for this year, the reason can be COVID. That's totally fine, because none of the others really apply. So, but we won't, hopefully we'll know in a month or so, or sooner, much sooner would be preferred, how to do that. And then upload that template to data test in EdPlan. And I'll show you a slide in a moment about how to do that, okay? Any other questions on the 45-day timeline? Okay, indicator 12, early childhood transition. Purpose of this is, again, it's a compliance indicator. You have to be 100% compliant on this. We report the counts of eligibility outcomes for students who transition from Sooner Start from the Part C program, and any reasons for delay in completing those evaluations and IEPs. Okay, and again, there are two categories of delay: family refusal, declined services, and then other reasons. So again, there are some collection changes this year, almost identical to indicator 11, okay? So prepare your report with your Sooner Start referrals that were due by March 13th using the district summary data table as a template. If you have no kiddos who are waiting for evaluations and IEPs because of the school closures, then you can go ahead and submit your data. You don't need to wait. But if you have any that have birthdays after March 13th, you have not been able to complete the evaluation, they will be delayed, okay? Then just track those, keep track of their current status, and we'll notify you hopefully soon of how to report those, okay? So here's the table for indicator 12, referrals from Part C to B. That first box again is auto sum of the total referred directly from Sooner Start, and that will just sum the boxes below. In the first box, enter the students, the referrals that were determined not eligible. Okay, the determination was completed by the 3rd birthday, but they were determined not eligible. Enter that number there. In line 2, enter the number of students found eligible. Okay, they were done, evaluations and IEPs were completed timely. Enter the number of students there. 3 is the only family reason we have. Parent refused consent or declined services. So let's say you get to the TPC, the transition planning meeting, and parents say, you know, we're just not interested in Part B services right now. Then you report that as a referral and you enter that number right here. Okay, so you enter a 1 for that one student whose parent declined services. Okay, it doesn't matter if you ever got to the eligibility determination part or not. At any time, if parents refuse consent or decline services, then you can enter that here. as a referral that parents were not interested in pursuing. Line 4, okay? Compare line 4 here to line 5 at the very bottom, okay? So these two are different things. Line 4 above is the number of children who were referred to Part C less than 90 days before their 3rd birthday. So we call these late referrals to Sooner Start. So maybe the doctor, the parents took the child in to see their pediatrician at 2 years and 9 months old, okay, right before their 3rd birthday. And the pediatrician says, we should really refer students to, we should really refer this child to Sooner Start. They could use these services. So they get referred to Sooner Start. Sooner Start says, you are nearly 3, let's just move you on to Part B. That child would be reported here. It's a late referral to Sooner Start, okay? And districts are not liable for completing those on time because nobody has enough information to process that on time, okay? The difference with down below, that late referral from Sooner Start, that's if Sooner Start sends you a referral within those last 90 days before the 3rd birthday, but the child has been receiving Sooner Start services for quite some time. Usually, this is due to the parent waiting to say that they want Part B services. So the parents wait until the last minute to say, after all, I do want to be referred to Part B. Becomes a late referral from Sooner Start. The district is liable for that. Okay, so you must complete that by the 3rd birthday or it will be a reason for delay. But those two are different things. And if you're having trouble distinguishing between them for any one child, just let us know and we can help you with that. Okay. Let me look at a couple of these questions in the chat real quick. So we don't count Sooner Start kids that we didn't get additional testing on. We placed using incoming tests. You report those for indicator 12. You do not report those for indicator 11. Okay, so it's different. Any referral from Sooner Start, you report for indicator 12. You only report indicator 11 if you got consent for additional evaluations. So after consent, parents didn't produce the child for testing. That would be for indicator 12, that would be parent declined services. Essentially, basically we can't contact them. They are not responding to contacts, so we can't complete anything. So that would be a parent reason. Under indicator 11, that would be the parent refused to produce the child. If they are a late referral from Sooner Start, but you complete on time, do you record on number 5? No, you would record it as timely. Okay, so as long as it's timely, you report it under number 2 or number 1. Great questions. Okay. So that number 5, line number 5, IEP not completed on the 3rd birthday. So if you have any that were delayed past the 3rd birthday for any reason other than number 3 or 4, you report those in line 5, and you have to give us the reason. You have to check the box for the reason down below, okay? You will also have to provide us an Excel sheet, spreadsheet with those students' names and information and the reasons for delay, okay? I'll go through that, how to do that in just a moment. Finally, again, like for indicator 11, we need the maximum number of days past the 3rd birthday to implement the most tardy IEP. So if for any students that go past the 3rd birthday delays, we need to know the longest number of days it took to complete that information. So notes on EC transition, again, a late referral from Sooner Start is not excused, but it's not the same thing if the child was referred at the last moment to Sooner Start, okay? So again, we can help you distinguish between those if you need that. If the IEP was not completed, again, you must create that Excel file that lists all of those names and information for us with the reasons for delay. At this time, if you have any delay due to school closures or COVID-19, hold off on reporting those on that spreadsheet until we hear from OSEP about how to proceed. If they are reported on that spreadsheet, you can use the reason COVID. If they are reported on that spreadsheet, if we have to report those, you won't be liable for those because it's a school closure and so forth. But we will still need to monitor and track those. okay? So how to upload that information. First of all, the non-compliance templates are on our data web page at that link I showed you at the start of the presentation. So download those non-compliance templates, begin filling those out if you have data to report. Once they're complete, then we have created an EdPlan, we're calling it a document sharing tool because we can't share personally identifiable information through email. We cannot ask you to send us STNs by email. We can't ask you to send us names, nothing like that. In fact, you shouldn't be sending it because email is not necessarily secure. So anytime we need to share information that includes PII, we do it through this fake student that we have created in your EdPlan system. Okay, the last name is test, the first name is data. So you search for the student, you select the student name, okay, and you open the documents section for that student, and then you can upload any relevant documents, okay? So if you have, you know, a list of kiddos whose STNs are incorrect, if you have questions about certain students and the information they have in their EdPlan and you need to share that with us, do it through this. This is the best way to respond to those, to share that information so that we don't break FERPA, okay? Stacey, I'll need to respond to yours later because that's quite a long question, but we are recording the chat and we will be able to respond to those questions later. Okay, personnel. We have to collect personnel information to report federally. We don't actually use it ourselves yet. We're trying to figure out how to do that, but federally, we are federally required to report all state, we just report aggregate for the whole state, the count of personnel providing related services and paraprofessionals in the state of Oklahoma, okay? They want to know how many people, how many FTEs are working with special education students. So related services, fully certified and not, we have 11 discipline categories. Paraprofessionals, qualified and not, and that's reported by age group. Okay, so other personnel serving students on an IEP ages 3 through 21. So if you have any related service providers in your district, which I assume you do, we ask you to report those, okay? All 11 categories only include personnel employed or on contract as of child count, October 1 last year, okay? This is what that table looks like. The first column is the fully certified. The second column is not fully certified, so report those accordingly. To calculate FTEs, you count the total average hours served with students on IEPs by that category, okay? So if you want to count by week, you can do by week. If you want to count by month or by year, you can do that too, and then you round to the 100th decimal. If a service provider works even 1 hour a week with students on IEPs, count that hour as a percent of FTE, okay? It's very important that we get a full view of that. Yes, you would report OT assistants, PT assistants, SLP assistants, if they are providing the same services that the, I don't know what the term would be, the non-assistant would be doing, okay? If they're providing those same services. If they're not providing the same services, then don't count them. And in our end of year data collection manual, we go through each of those disciplines and say what that person would be doing. And you can look at that and check to see if your assistants fall into those categories, okay? If they're part of a co-op, I'll get to that question in just a moment. So we do have an FTE calculator that you can use to count all of this on contract and employed by the district, okay? Both on contract and employed by the district. So co-ops, interlocals must divide service provision among the districts. So if you have a paraprofessional or a related service provider who's working through a co-op and that person serves 5 different districts, let's say they're full-time, but they serve 5 different districts throughout the week, students from 5 different districts, the co-op or ILC needs to break that out for the districts so that they know that the SLP works 0.2 in this district, 0.5 in this district, 0.1 and 0.1 in the rest of the districts, okay? Has to be broken out by the co-op because the districts won't necessarily know how that should be, okay? Be really careful of counts in these categories: PE teachers, social workers, medical nursing staff, or counselors, okay? Unless a counselor works full-time just with special education students, you should not count them, okay? Unless you have a social worker or a PE teacher working full-time just with special education students, you will not count them. Only count the FTEs related to specific related service provision as outlined on an IEP. So with PE teachers, if you have special education students who go to the regular PE class and they participate in that class with all other students, then that PE teacher is not providing related services. They are providing the general education curriculum, okay? Do not count them. A good example is nursing staff. Let's say you have a nurse who provides specific services to a student who needs medical care throughout the day in order to participate in school. That is part of the IEP, possibly part of a 504, but most likely an IEP. Those services that that nurse provides would be included, okay, as part of an FTE. But if they're bandaging knees, if they are dealing with flu or anything like that, anything that they would provide services to any student, then don't count them as part of that FTE, okay? So here are a couple of examples. So if you have a counselor who is on the IEP and sees the child for 30 minutes a week, do we count? Yes, that's the perfect example. That's what you would count, okay? Folks who are listed on the IEP providing related services for IEP purposes, okay? So let's say you have a part-time SLP. Your work week is 35 hours. Your SLP works 20 hours per week. The FTE calculation would be 20 divided by 35. Let's say you have a full-time counselor who serves 3 students 1 hour a week each. Okay, you would take that 3 hours, divide it by 35, and get that calculation of 0.09. Some of these will seem really, really small, and that's okay, because remember, we aggregate them at the state level. Let's say you have someone on contract who only works periodically throughout the year. Maybe your work month is an average 140 hours, or your year is 1,080. You have a psychometrist who works an average of 11 hours per month. Okay, 11 divided by 140 would give you 0.08. Let's say you have a deaf interpreter who works 5 hours a year to help with IEP meetings or something like that. Okay, that would be 5 divided by 1,080. That would be really small. You just round that up to 0.01. You could leave it as 0.005, and we would just aggregate that for the state. Okay, so those periodic ones are a little bit trickier. You don't necessarily need to go back through all of your files and all of your contracts to add up exact hours. You can estimate. Okay, so if you know your interpreter comes in about 2 hours a month, go ahead and use 2 hours a month. If you know your psychometrist comes in about 10 hours a month or 3 hours a week, you can go ahead and use that average calculation, okay? The feds want to know approximately, as best guess as we have, how many people, how many FTEs are serving students. And so, very precise exact calculations are not necessary, but they do need to be as close as possible. Okay, calculating school year hours. If you're not sure of your school year hours, and this gets tricky right now, accreditation does have a worksheet with instructions that you can calculate the number of school hours for the year. Okay, if you're averaging out throughout the year for services that were provided prior to March 13th, prior to school closures and distance learning, okay, you can average out for those months, and that would be fine. Remember that you only need to report individuals who were employed, positions that were employed by the district as of October 1. So if you had, let's say, 3 SLPs working in your district on October 1, but since then you decided you need to hire a new one because you had so many services to provide, you would not report that new person you had hired, okay, that new position you had opened up, okay. Do not include school for the blind teachers because they are provided. I am not sure that psychometrist falls under psychologist. For FTEs, for special schools, we'll need to check on that, but if you report end of year data, you should be reporting end of year personnel also. So I would assume that you would just report all those. We do need to know how many teachers are providing services to special education students in our School for the Deaf and School for the Blind as the state level. So I think just go ahead and report those. Okay, paraprofessionals. Again, there's a slight change with personnel. You no longer have to split your kindergarten paras into 3 to 5 and 6 to 21. I know that's been a pain in the past. If you have a para working in a kindergarten, okay, report that para, and they only work in kindergarten, report that para in the 6 to 21-year-old group, okay? Your paraprofessionals who are working with preschool, report those in the 3 to 5-year-old age group, okay? So 3 to 5, report preschool students, folks who work with preschool students. Do not include your 5-year-olds in kindergarten and so forth. Now, if you have a para who serves all ages throughout the district, then you will need to divide their time between the 3 to 5 and 6 to 21, okay? So maybe during the week they work, 5 hours in the pre-K group and the rest of the time in the school age. Then that would be, 5 divided by 35 in 3 to 5, and the rest would be in 6 to 21. Okay, again, we're happy to talk through these and work through the calculations with you if you have questions. Okay, voluntary CEIS student reporting. Now, if para splits times between pre-K and K, yes, you would divide those between the two, 3 to 5 and 6 to 21. Okay, for each LEA that reserves funds, we have to report that reserves funds for coordinated early intervening services, voluntary, okay, during the current school year. We need the count of students who are receiving those services. So we don't have a lot of districts that do this voluntarily throughout the year, only 10. And so most of these have done this in the past, just report the number of students who received services. And in the past 2 years, any who received services and then subsequently received special education and related services, okay? These are the 10 that have to give us student numbers. If you are one of these districts, we will expect numbers. If you don't provide numbers, we will bug you about that and get those from you, okay? Now, 3 of these have asterisks on them, Goodwell, Monroe, and Wilson. If you are one of these 3 districts, you did not budget any funding for CEIS. So if you do not expect to expend CEIS this year, then you can report 0 students served, okay? Because if you didn't spend any money on CEIS, then you can't serve any students. So just keep that in mind. If your district, which Wilson, I would have to check. It would be in your grants management system, you would know. If your district is not listed here, then your district summary data page should just have zeros in those 2 boxes. Okay, just put 0 and 0. If you happen to put numbers in there, we will ignore them. So there's not a big consequence to that. We have to report this federally. We don't use this ourselves, but we do have to report it federally about the number of students served. If you had to set aside for comprehensive CEIS, you do not need to give us numbers of students served through that funding, okay? We're fortunate for that. That may change in the future, so you may want to track that anyway. But for now, we don't have to report those numbers this year who had to set aside this current school year for significant disproportionality. Okay. If you have questions about that, feel free to send us an email. Any other district summary data page questions? No? Okay. Barbara writes, if you have a 3-year-old attending preschool Mother's Day out at a church, receiving speech and or special ed services at your public school, and you're recording the preschool as a parent provided in their ECE, do you mark them attending private school? Or, oh, that's something different. So we'll talk about that. That's a child count enrollment question, early childhood environment question. And we can get back to you. Send that to us via email and we'll be able to address that more thoroughly. Okay. Student level data. Do we count paras that are Gen Ed Pre-K and K paras only if they provide paraprofessional services to special education students per the IEP? Okay, so if you have paraprofessionals who are working in pre-K and kindergarten, but are not specifically students serving special education students to provide services for them specifically, then you would not count them. Great question. Okay, student level data. So we pull this directly from entries made in Ed Plan. It might be from the IEP process page, it might be from the discipline page, okay, exit reasons. There are 5 things that we pull. One of them we don't use for reports yet, but we're hoping to eventually get there. The data we pull: early childhood outcomes, exit reasons and dates, secondary transition information, discipline information, and then we pull consent to eligibility timelines to validate the data that you provide us. Okay. And we have reports for all of those. So we'll show you where to access those in a minute. Do we list the para in a kindergarten room who is there helping a SPED student and others but not on the IEP? No, you would not report that. Great questions. These are all a little bit specific into the details. You know, if you happen to report them, it would not be the end of the world, but technically we would not report them. Okay, indicator 7, early childhood outcomes. We have to report the specific learned skills outcomes of very young students, our 3 to 5-year-olds. And we do that through the early childhood data collection page in Ed Plan, the COSIF, that early childhood outcomes summary page. Okay. This is required for any student who enters an early childhood program. Technically, most of you don't necessarily have early childhood programs, but if they are in special education between the ages of 3 and 5, we consider them to be part of an early childhood program. The feds do too. So that's why we talk about it that way. So anytime you have a student who's 3 to 5 years old, they should have their ECO entry information, entry ratings, and they should have their ECO outcome ratings once they turn 5, okay? So this page, the childhood outcome summary form page, you rate all 3 outcomes as compared to typical peers at entrance to special education and at exit. So you rate them on their social and emotional skills, how they're acquiring and using knowledge and skills, and then taking appropriate action to meet needs, okay? And then you record whether progress was made. This is a link to something called the ECO decision tree. So if you're not sure how to rate a student from 1 to 7, if you're having questions about whether they need rated, those kinds of things, go ahead and open this. We have a link to this on our website as well. It's a great little reminder of how to complete ECOs. We also have links to modules that you can complete for data training to really see how ratings should be conducted and conducted well. So we have a lot of districts that rate too high or rate too low, and you know who you are because we've talked to you about it in various settings, but we have a lot of information on our website to provide training on those topics. Okay. Let's see. Marcy, I'll get to your question in a little bit. We may have to just look at the report with you to answer that question. Okay. So criteria for data entry. All students aged 3 to 5 should have entrance ratings if they have received or will receive services for at least 6 months. Okay. So at some point, you know, if a student comes in at age 3, probably they're going to be receiving services for a while. So you create their entrance ratings where they are on those 3 outcomes. If they exit the program, if they complete their IEP prior to prior to going into kindergarten, or now when they enter kindergarten, you will enter their exit ratings for the early childhood program. So one thing OSEP changed was by saying 5-year-olds in kindergarten are now part of the school age population, we will no longer enter ECOs up to the age of 6. okay? So for this year, if your student has turned or will turn 6 or exited the program prior to June 30th, you need to enter their exit ratings by June 30th, okay? If you can't because of school closures, that's okay. Okay, I have some information on that on the next page. But starting this fall, if the student will enter kindergarten this fall, you also need to enter their exit ratings as soon as you can, now or at the start of the school year, regardless of age, 5 or 6, okay? Unless they're new to the program, which would mean they hadn't had at least 6 months of service. So if you have questions about that, email us, we can help you walk through that. But basically, once a child enters kindergarten, they are no longer in the early childhood program, so they need to have their exit ratings, okay? So this should help. Our advice is going to be to enter those ratings at the end of their final preschool year. Whether they're 4 or 5, you know, turning 5 over the summer or 5 already, if they're going to enter kindergarten in the fall, you need to complete their early childhood outcomes in the spring before they exit. Okay. So for now, complete your unfinished but due ECO ratings as it's possible. You can conduct virtual meetings. You can use recent observations if they're still relevant. Okay. If you cannot complete them, they won't be held against you. Okay. But you should complete them in the fall for the child's file. Only ECO ratings that were due by March 13th will be monitored. So all of those need to be entered. If they're not entered, they will be considered incomplete. But anything after March 13th, complete as you can. If you can't complete them, you won't be held liable for them. But next year, as I just said, ECO ratings will be completed in late spring prior to the start of kindergarten for any children who are exiting preschool. Okay. We'll be providing more guidance on that as we move forward. And Destiny Murray, our early childhood coordinator, helped develop all of this plan. So she knows that also and can help you if you have questions. Any questions about indicator 7? Okay, again, we have an ECO report in advanced reporting that you can use to review your outcomes, check whether they are completed or not, and make sure that all data is entered correctly. Okay, exiting data. The purpose of this, every year, we provide an exiting report. It actually goes out in the spring for the previous year to report the count of students ages 14 to 21. And this is just 14 to 21. So if you think you're missing students from your exit report, it's probably because of age, who exited districts and the reason they exited. So this feeds the indicator 2 dropout calculation. So it's really important that this exit report is correct for your district. We look at many different reasons for exit that are included in the collection. We report all of these federally. Dropped out and unknown, deceased, exceeded maximum age. So if they, if they turn 22 during the year, then but they don't really graduate, they just exit because they've reached their maximum age. Graduated, transferred to another school system or moved out of state, and then exit reasons for Lindsay Nicole Henry Scholarship and moved homeschool. Okay, and both of those are considered return to regular ed. If you have students who you determine are no longer eligible for special education, they are still enrolled in your district, do not exit them from Ed Plan, okay? Conduct and complete the non-eligibility documentation, do all of that you would normally do, but do not exit them, okay? We will see that as an exit from special ed and count it as such, but it's not, you don't want to remove them from Ed Plan because they are still in your school district. And again, this is just 14 to 21. This does not include little kids. Now, exits should be happening automatically based on your student information system entry. So if they are exited in your student information system, the next day or so, they should exit from Ed Plan. Okay? So you need to ensure that students have exited correctly in your SIS. You can update Ed Plan if the exit reason or date needs corrected, but you should also be doing that in the student information system, okay? So if you see a student exited as unknown and you did not enter that, you need to go to the student information system and update that there. Okay. Use unknown only as a temporary exit status. We do count those as dropouts. Okay. And prior to June 30th, I'll get to questions in just a minute. Prior to June 30th, exit your high school students graduating with a diploma from the student information system. Okay. So if you have seniors who are graduating on May 15th, okay, exit those from the student information system on May 15th, and it will process over to EdPlan. Just make sure that you complete the, is it summary of progress? Summary of performance statement, okay? Complete the summary of performance statements in their records as required for graduating seniors, okay? Do not exit other grades with this exit reason. So if you have 8th graders who are moving to another district because you don't have a high school, do not exit them as graduated. Do not even exit them. They will automatically transfer to the new district when the new district enrolls them, okay? If you don't exit your graduates by June 30th, okay, this is really important. They will not count in your dropout report, so they won't be counted as positive numbers to balance out your dropouts. So it's really important that you include your graduates and you exit them from your student information system. Double check that they're exited from EdPlan so that your dropout rate can benefit if you've had any dropouts, okay? 8th graders who are 14 at K-8 schools will be included in your exit report. Sherry, don't exit them in EdPlan by graduating with a diploma. Wait to have the SIS do it. Do it in the student information system, and then we'll pull over to EdPlan. We do process exits every night. We send a file. OMES, the WAVE, sends a file to EdPlan, and that is processed every night to run exits. If a student exits due to homeschool, no, they're no longer counted as dropouts, okay? If your SIS exits 8th graders, will that affect EdPlan? No, it should not. They should wait until after July 1. But as long as the exit reason is transferred to another school system, then it won't have any problem at all, okay? That would be fine. Just don't want to exit as a graduate for 8th graders. That can cause a lot of problems, okay? Okay, let's see. Any other questions about exiting? Several that would pull overnight. Exit reason is blank. Yes, so if that is part of a WAVE issue, that the file that they send to us does not have an exit reason. So if you are missing an exit reason for any of those students that are transfers to another district, then you just need to enter their exit reason on in their student record. That's totally fine. So missing exit reasons you can update in EdPlan, no problem at all. No, so Deborah asks, is this new to exit seniors through the WAVE only? No, this is, all exits are done through the WAVE. We've been doing that for a very long time, at least a year. Let's see, so indicator 13, secondary transition. This is our final compliance indicator for which we collect data with end of year. And we have to report the percentage of students whose IEPs meet the 8 secondary transition requirements, and those are listed here. I won't read through them. You should see them. You can manually do your own exits, but we prefer that you don't, because if your manual entry is not showing, I mean, if your manual entry differs from the student information system, there could be conflict there. So wait for the student information system, and if something needs fixed, you can fix it later. Okay. Okay, secondary transition. Report the percentage of students whose IEPs meet those requirements. This is relevant only for students who are at least 16 years old or in 9th grade. So if they're 15 in 9th grade, 16 in 8th grade, all of this applies. And we measure it by whether a student's IEP has been finalized on time. Okay, IEPs can only be finalized with transition information in place for that age group. So if it's finalized on time, we assume at least that the bare minimum transition information has been included. Now, we don't look at quality. We know some of these are not very high quality, and that's what monitoring is for. But for data reporting, as long as it's finalized on time, we count it as timely for secondary transition for indicator 13. Okay. Okay, going back to exiting real quick, say that again about not exiting through EdPlan. Exit your students through the student information system and it will pull over into EdPlan the next day. We prefer that you do not manually exit students from EdPlan unless your SIS is not talking to the WAVE and the WAVE is not talking to EdPlan, okay? Go through your student information system. It's the best way to make sure that all data aligns across the state, okay? And that it's the same in your student information system and the WAVE and EdPlan. Sometimes if you don't do it that way, then information won't match between them and then we will have data conflicts and that causes issues with data reporting. So please go through your student information system. Okay. When you finalize your IEPs or complete the summary of performance for your graduates, please remind students to update their contact information in the student information system, okay? So that we have that information for the coming year. A few minor collection changes for the special circumstances this year. We will still pull a list of all students who meet the reporting requirements, meaning age or grade, and their IEP compliance, okay? If the IEP was due to be refinalized after March 13th, you will not be liable for meeting those timelines in the fall determination, okay? If it was due before March 13th or on March 13th, you are liable for those. So those must be completed. And if they're not completed by June 30th, you will be considered non-compliant for indicator 13, okay? Monitoring will still occur to ensure that all IEPs are refinalized as soon as reasonable this fall, okay? But let's say you had one due, you know, March 31st, okay, during the school closure. You won't be held liable for completing that on time because schools were closed, special circumstances, etc. If it's still not completed by June 30th, you still won't be liable for that, okay? I think we had about 4,300 students who are going to be non-timely and their IEPs aren't going to be finalized on time by June 30th. So there's going to be a lot of non-compliance with this. You guys are going to have a lot of work to do this fall. So if you can hold IEP meetings now and refinalize those, especially for your high school students, it will be really, really beneficial for you this fall. It will be beneficial for those students and the families. You can hold phone meetings. You can hold virtual meetings, whatever you need to do to hold an IEP meeting, try to do that, okay? But if you just absolutely can't, for whatever reason, again, you won't be liable for meeting that timeline. Okay. Any questions about indicator 13? Again, we have a report for that in advanced reporting so that you can review those, and it tells you whether it is compliant or not at this time. If we get them done by June 30th, do they need to be included in this report? If they're done by June 30th, what we do, we just pull a list of all students 16 and older, 9th grade and above, with their compliance date. And if they are compliant as of June 30th, then we consider them compliant. So even if it was done late, okay, but as long as it's compliant by June 30th, then that's what we look at. Okay, discipline. So this is the most complicated data submission, probably for you all. We have to report all disciplinary removals for students with IEPs, all ages 3 to 21, according to OSEP requirements. And OSEP tells us that a removal is any time a student is removed from their regular placement for disciplinary reasons. Okay, anytime a student is removed from their regular placement for disciplinary reasons, and that will affect your in-school suspension reports. So whether or not your district or your school reports these as suspensions, you have to report them as suspensions for federal reporting purposes. Okay, this feeds indicator 4, and it feeds the significant disproportionality calculations. So there are 4 types of disciplinary removals to report: in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, unilateral removal to interim alternative educational settings, lovely long term, and then removal by hearing officer to IAES. Okay, unilateral removals are done by school personnel. Removal by hearing officers are done by others. Okay, I have that line in there under in-school suspensions. It says de facto suspensions, and that's sort of what I'm talking about. So let's say you remove a student from their regular placement because of discipline to the principal's office for half a day, or to the school library for half a day, or to the special education classroom for half a day, okay? And it's not in their IEP or behavior plan. That is a de facto in-school suspension, and you have to report it as such, okay? It doesn't matter whether services are provided or not. If they are removed from their regular placement, it is a removal and it is a suspension, okay? They are very, very strict on this, and it's due to IDEA. So just keep that in mind. Now, I know that for most of you, you may not know that a student was removed from their gen ed classroom for 2 hours to go to the library because of disciplinary purposes. It's not in their behavior plan. They never notify you as the special ed director. If you don't know about it, there's nothing you can do about it. But if you know about them, you need to report them. Okay. So entering discipline. Enter your discipline incidents. There are 2 ways to do this, okay? So let's say you just have a few throughout the year. You can enter each incident via the discipline info tab in EdPlan, okay? This is what that information looks like. When you click on that tab, you will be asked first to report whether services were provided. Then you will have to report what the discipline information looked like. So what type of removal, how many days. If it's less than a full day, put it in as a decimal, so 0.5 or 0.25, something like that. The date it begins and ended, so forth, okay? If, however, let's say you have a lot throughout the year, or you have a very large district, and you want to add all of it at once, you can do that through a spreadsheet upload to EdPlan, okay? And that's important to note, that there are techniques so that you don't have to go one by one by one. Yes, as I mentioned, if it's not in behavior plan or not on the IEP, then it's considered a suspension. If a student has in their behavior plan or in the IEP that they can go to another location to help them manage their own behavior, then that is perfectly fine. And you're right, it's not a suspension, okay? Differences in types of discipline, okay? ISS, any removal from the standard educational placement to another in-school location for disciplinary reasons, any removal, okay? Now, if it's 5 minutes, clearly don't worry about reporting that, okay? Anything over an hour, it's best to report. Anything over half a day, you have to report. OSS, removal from the school building for disciplinary reasons, okay? So if you call the parents to say, Johnny's just not managing it today, you need to take him home, and that's not in a plan and it's not in their IEP, guess what, folks? That is an out-of-school suspension and you need to report it as such, okay? Drugs, weapons, serious bodily injury. There are 2 types. There's unilateral removals and there's hearing officer removals, okay? We have 2 examples here. If you have one of those, you're going to have to report 2 types of discipline for them. Okay, so did the student remain under the direct supervision of school personnel during the removal until the IEP team could determine the appropriate alternative setting for the student? Okay, if yes, if they remained under direct supervision of school personnel, then until placement was changed, it's counted as ISS. After placement, it's unilateral removal. If they didn't remain under the direct supervision of school personnel, then it's OSS, and then you count the rest of that as unilateral removal. Okay, so it's very specific on how we have to report these. So I'm including all of this information in the slides for you to review later. We have this in our discipline documentation. It's very specific. I know it's a lot of detail. We don't have a lot of time to really get into that right now, but make sure that you take a look at this if you have any of these cases, okay? So I have 2 slides here, what placement in IAES by school personnel looks like, and then placement in IAES by hearing officers. So take a look at those in the slides when you download them, and read those carefully. This text here just comes out of IDEA. So it's nothing different, it's just copied from IDEA. So you can look at that there too. So discipline help. Removals must be reported in that specific way, regardless of district definitions of suspensions, very important. We do have a SPED discipline for principals document that you can download. It's helpful for you, it's helpful for your principals and your superintendents about how to define special education discipline. Is it possibility that principals, admins could get training? Absolutely, we would be happy to do that. We have thought about that in the past, but no one's been interested. So we do have that document that they can look at. Okay. Again, auto upload is available. Contact Tristan or Travis if you have questions, and that's the website where our discipline data is located. Okay. Any other student data level questions? Just have a few minutes to conclude. Okay, again, feel free to email us any questions. We will be happy to reply. Okay, so in summary, your superintendents will be certifying, they have to certify the completeness and accuracy of this data, all what we are considering end of year data collection. So from the district summary data page, they are certifying the personnel, FTE counts, initial consent counts and causes for delay, and the referral counts in early childhood, transition causes for delay. From student IEPs, exit dates and reasons, early childhood outcomes, secondary transition compliance, and disciplinary removals, okay? So how do they certify that? We do not have a mechanism in EdPlan to certify because it would cost too much. So we use an old system, we use single sign-on. Superintendents must certify between July 2nd and July 15th in single sign-on. And we use the special education child count system. When they open that up, they click the district profile tab, and there will be a button there that says certify end of year. Make sure the fiscal year is 2020. They will need to select district. Sometimes it lets them do it anyway, but sometimes you have to select district. It's kind of picky that way. Then click certify end of year. Now, data will not freeze in EdPlan, and no data is visible in single sign-on, okay? So they may go there and they may click on reports and they may want to see their end of year data. There is no end of year data there. We do not put anything in there. We just use this as a mechanism for certification, okay? You do not need to enter any data into single sign-on. So those of you who have in the past tried to put data into single sign-on for end of year purposes, we don't do that anymore. You don't need to do that. We ignore it. We collect nothing from there, okay? Don't waste your time doing that. So if no data is here, how can superintendents see what they're certifying? Well, that's up to you to share your data. So you need to take screenshots or print the district summary data page. If you want to create your own personal template and give that to them, you can, okay? District level data reports, you can print those and produce PDF copies. You can produce spreadsheet copies through advanced reporting. And you just click on that little button there with the arrow pointing up, and you can export the document and print it that way. Now, some of your superintendents will say, you know, I trust you. If you say it's fine, I'll move forward. But others really do want to see it. So if your superintendents want to see the data, if you want to show it to them, regardless of whether they want to see it or not, then you will need to produce those reports for them. Now, what not to use: do not use the scheduled reports on the reports page. These are all out of date. They're not accurate any longer. We don't keep them up to date. Nothing. Technically, they shouldn't be there anymore. Sometimes they still show, depending on the district. So we're trying to get all of that cleaned up, but it can take some time. Use the advanced reporting system. Okay, very important. If you're not sure how to use that, give us an email, send us an email. We'll be glad to walk you through that. We can schedule Teams meetings, which are like Zoom. We can share screens. We can walk you through stuff. We can email, all those sorts of things. We just can't make phone calls right now. None of us is in the office. So if you give us a call, we won't be calling back. Please email us any of your questions. Okay, and here's our contact information here at the end. I have phone numbers on here, but we probably won't be back in the office until end of May or June. So please email, and we will be happy to set up a time to meet with you or talk to you. Any last minute questions? We have 3 minutes left. Nothing else? Okay, these slides again will be available on our website. There's an early draft there already, which is mostly the same. There are a few differences, but you are welcome to go there and look at those and download any of the other information from our data website. Entering, need to do an Excel upload along with entering discipline data in EdPlan. Monica, give us an email about entering discipline in EdPlan through uploads. We can help you with that. It's not required, it's an option if you have a lot of discipline incidents. Okay, if that's all, then thank you. And we look forward to hearing from you with any questions you may have. Have a good afternoon.